So we're going to start off talking about data gathering, and there's lots of different models you could probably follow, and they're probably all just have similar states like this. We happen to like this one in particular, and so when you're doing any type of data analysis, you're going to start by defining the question, and that's pretty important because it sets the tone for everything else you're going to do. And this is where your consulting skills come in with identifying that business problem. So on this one, we'd like you to take a moment, and what I'd like you to do is you're going to check a stamp. That's the annotation you want, and just choose whichever of the little icons you wish to choose.
And Teresa, I was kind of thinking that what's not on here is the whole people analytics. And so there is a lot of data. And I think JJ's comment is, I was thinking about, but I wasn't quite sure how to articulate, but there's a lot of data throughout the organization. So if we can it could be pulse surveys, it could be, employee engagement surveys, and that if we can find ways to harness that using this technology, like, AWS is one example. I think that is kind of fascinating.
So just quickly, this is, we should all be pretty familiar with this one, Kirkpatrick's model, and it helps us gather learning data within the consulting process. And traditionally, we've looked at level one first, the reaction first, the learning second, behavior third, and then results fourth. But what we encourage you to do is start with level 4 first. It's called a reverse Kirkpatrick. It sounds like a specific dive, a reverse Kirkpatrick. But what you're starting with is that business result that someone wants to achieve with this request they give to you. And by knowing that first, you can identify behaviors that need to change or be affected. And then you can define, did somebody measure or learn something based on what the intervention is, and then how did that learner feel about that learning, if you want to collect that information.
So let's continue on and talk about questions and probing questions. Probing question would be questions that are open-ended questions, right? And typically when you are gathering data, you want to ask open-ended questions. The open-ended questions are who, what, when, where, why, and how. And an easy way to remember, I've popped it here into chat, would be your 5 W's and your H. So there's 4 basic types of probing questions. What we'd like to do now is go into a breakout room. And for this activity, you're going to be given a situation, a little scenario that requires various probing questions to gather your quantitative and qualitative data.
Breakout room number 1, clarifying question was, describe the gap or the problem.
For example, we had, what is an example of the pain points? And what is an example of the desired state?
The evaluating question was, why do you believe a leadership development curriculum is required?
We didn't quite make it to motivation, but we thought that we could still focus in around pain points, and solving those would be a hefty motivation for the group.
So as we were saying earlier, as learning consultants, we wear 2 hats, right? We have that consulting hat that Teresa was talking about. And also, as we look to get data, we're going to use those tools that we already are familiar with, maybe the ADDIE model and also the Kirkpatrick model that we're going to show at the end, I believe. A best practice that's come up in our industry, and you all may be familiar with this, is to combine what traditionally has been, going through your consulting questions, right? But also pulling in these 4 different levels of Kirkpatrick. So in uniting these in the industry, we're moving to, or we have moved to, a more unified analysis of learning measurement when we're acting in the capacity of learning consultants.